Welcome back. This is dice modeling video 6, I believe. And we're going to continue. Once we have the dice modeled, the low poly and the high poly, we got the UV maps all finished. The next step is to scale, delete by type history, and freeze modifications on both of these objects. So we're going to go ahead and kind of get things set up. The high poly's underneath here. I'm just basically making the low poly just fit over top, just barely fit over top. But if we look over to the front view, you will see that it just barely fits over top. So let's go ahead and turn off the layer of the high poly. And one of the things I want to point out that we need to do is we've got some hard edges right in the center, right here, as you can see. So you need to double click on those, okay, and do that all around the dice. Go to Mesh Display and Soften Edge, and that will help with how the dice will be mapped. I mean, as far as the normal maps and the ambient occlusion maps, you do not want hard edges on softened areas like the round areas, because it won't normal map correctly. So make sure you soften those edges first, and to do that, select the edges that you need softened and go to Mesh Display, Soften Edge. Alright, let's go ahead and let's go to Edit, Delete by Type History, and let's go to Modify Freeze Transformations. That'll clean everything up. And then let's turn off low poly and then turn on the high poly and do the same thing. Let's go ahead and Edit, Delete by Type History, and Modify Freeze Transformations. So since we have this high poly ready to go, let's go ahead and click and hold the left mouse button and scroll down. Just kind of basically hold the mouse button and just kind of roll down and type in 16. Okay, this is going to make a really big dice. That's okay. And we're going to go to, and what we want to do now is we want to freeze transformations. Let's do that right now. Modify Freeze Transformations. Okay, let's put this in a layer and in the low poly. We want to click on that, and we want to do the same thing. We want to type in 16 for all three axes, and then modify Freeze Transformations. Okay, so now the objects are ready to go. So you have to have the low poly UV mapped. Okay, the high poly does not need to be UV mapped. In fact, you probably shouldn't do anything with that as far as UVs go. It's just going to be a placeholder for the high definition that we need to pull in the maps, in the normal and ambient occlusion maps. So start with the low poly, highlight it, select it, go to File, Export Selection, and we need to click on OBJ Export. Now, if you don't have OBJ Export, you'll need to go to Windows, Settings, Preferences, Plugin Manager, and scrolling down, you will find OBJ Export right here. Click on Loaded and Auto Load, and click Refresh, and then close it. And then you can go select it, Export Selections, and go into here and select it. I'm going to export it, and you need to make sure that you type it out exactly what it is. So dice low poly. So I'm going to export. Alright, and then I'm going to turn that one off and turn the high poly on, select that one, go to File, Export Selection, and make sure file type is OBJ, and then click on, and then type in high poly, Export Selection, and then yes. So after that's done, we're going to go ahead and pull those maps from XNormal. XNormal is free. It's fairly easy to download. I have instructions emailed to you, so please read those. And what I'm going to do is once that's opened up, I'm going to click on High Definition. And under File, I'm going to get rid of the one I have in there. I'm going to start off fresh so you guys can follow along. Okay, so High Definition, I'm going to right click over the file and click on Add Mesh. Okay. That's weird. And so I'm going to go in here and go into my folder and my dice and my scenes, and here's my high poly, so I'm going to select that and open it. Again, that's high definition. Low definition, I'm going to go in here, right click, add mesh, and go low poly, open that up. And the low poly is the one with the UVs. And then I'm going to go to baking options. I'm going to click on normal map right here, turn everything else off. Make sure that my size is 2048 by 2048. Default bucket renderer it really depends on what kind of video card you have at home, but if you have something like a really high-powered NVIDIA card, like 960, 970, 980, or the 1070 or 1080, use the Optix CUDA renderer. It'll be a lot faster. Otherwise, the rest of us will have to use the poor default bucket renderer. And under the anti-aliasing, we want to do the highest for normal maps. Okay, and then in here we want to go ahead and save it out, and the type needs to be a TGA. Okay, and then you need to name it appropriately. So dice normal. And I'm just going to put FIN as in finished. And I don't want to put it in scenes, so I'm going to put it in my source images folder. I like to keep all my textures in my source images. So dice normal finish. So I'm going to save that. Alright, so generate map. That's pretty much it. And then you get to see it working its magic. Okay, it looks like it's generated. It tells me that it did 9.23 seconds. So I'm going to close that, and it takes us back. I'm going to click off normal map and click on ambient occlusion, and this time I'm going to turn the anti-aliasing to 1. Okay, so ambient occlusion. Everything else stays the same, except that we need to change this to a different name. So you can see this is what I wrote here. I'm going to click on it, and just instead of normal, I'm going to put AO, and then take away the normals on the end. There we go. And then click save and generate maps. It's fairly easy. It's painless, and the AO is my favorite part of it. I think it's pretty cool. The normal maps does some pretty incredible things. So with these maps together, I mean, your stuff can look really, really good. 9.847. So we have now the normal map baked and the ambient occlusion baked. And let's go ahead and close that. We're done with this. So what I would do is kind of clear things up at home and right-click and remove the mesh. You don't need it. Let's see. Let's click on it and remove mesh. There we go. And do this one too. There we go. That way we don't clutter things up. Alright, so close that. And then what we want to do now is, because we're done in Maya, we need to now go in and texture the dice. And I'll kind of take you through how to get that all put together, and then how to get it back on the dice again. So until next time,